All right, we are live. So let's get started here. So hey everyone, it's Chuck Gross and happy Wednesday. So it's time to get the Q&A rolling. For anyone that's new to Hangouts, there is a sidebar aptly titled Q&A. I've turned it on. Please be aware there is a slight delay between when you ask a question and when I see those questions. So please do not wait till the very end to ask. If you um, if you end up wanting to ask a question, get to it, just let me know and I can include it on the next Hangout, or I'll try to answer it for you outside of that context. So I have a couple questions that have already been asked. So what I'll do is I'll answer those first, and then I'll check for any questions that are being asked live. All right. So the first question comes from Polly, and Polly asks, in your experience with people you've worked with, what did the people who were successful have in common? And conversely, what did unsuccessful people have in common? Polly was thinking that this would give her some tips on how to be successful, as well as some pitfalls to avoid. And I love that you used conversely, so thank you. But that's a great question, Polly. So yes, there are a few vital differences between people that I've worked with that have succeeded and those that haven't. So the primary thing is the people that have succeeded state their goals with a positive intent. What I mean by that is, let's say you say, I want to lose weight because I want to feel better and have more energy, and I eventually want to do something that's incredibly personal that is made easier by being at a different weight and having more energy and feeling good. So for me, it was, I want to be able to lose weight so I can chase my kids around without being tired. I don't want to have them wait for me or not be able to chase them around. So compare that to an example of a negatively stated goal, which would be, I hate feeling fat. I want to lose weight. I regret that I haven't been able to do so just yet, despite me trying so hard. So that's a negatively stated goal. So that might seem a little bit minor, but those positively oriented goals help you kind of focus on the process. They let you place trust in that process, and they get you excited about those positive changes, which keeps you motivated. Motivation can be something that's very fickle and fleeting. You're not going to have it every day, so you can't rely on it entirely. But when you're positively oriented towards your goals, your motivation is going to be renewed. So your reason why, if it's positive, is going to renew that motivation when you need it the most. So those people tend to understand that this is a lifestyle change that's a lifelong process with ups and downs. They also tend to have a flexible approach to fitness, and I'll get into that in a moment. But what I mean by a lifelong process with up and downs is you can't just make all these sweeping changes, lose weight, and then go back to your old habits, because those habits are what was causing you to be where you were, and therefore your new habits are what causes you to lose the weight and then maintain that weight. So you can't just switch all the way back and expect the weight not to come back. So that's what I mean by it being a lifelong process. For me, it took 2 years to lose 200 pounds, and it's taken me 6 years of maintaining that. But it's the same habits that allowed me to lose weight that have also allowed me to maintain that weight loss. That's not to say I'm always as strict as I was losing the 200 pounds. That's certainly not the case. But the habits are the same there. The foundation is there. So conversely, the people with a negative mindset tend to focus on one thing, and that's the scale. What does the scale say? What am I good enough because of what the scale says? And that's their only measure of success, and that's setting yourself up for failure for many reasons. But these people are not successful tend to be hyper focused on the numbers rather than the habits or the processes that matter the most. So when I ask people that are experiencing this, I say, why do you care so much about the number on the scale? Does that actually change what you're doing? Meaning, if you can say the scale matters to me, but it went up, does that actually change what you're doing? Are you being consistent with your nutrition habits and your mindfulness habits and working to drink more water and working to sleep better? No, it's not going to change those things unless you're not doing those things. So the point is, you can't just continuously drop your calories and up your exercise forever, because that's not sustainable. Again, leading back to the problem of you have to be able to maintain the weight you lose. You can't just lose it. So that kind of highlights the fact that it is the habits that need to change and the mindset that has to change. It's not just doing something temporarily. So the scale does not really measure the things that matter the most. And the scale is generally a terrible measure of short-term progress because it's subject to all kinds of fluctuations that have nothing to do with fat loss whatsoever, like water weight swings due to salt intake. If you're stressed, your hormones jump up, your stress hormones jump up, and you put on water weight. All of that's normal, and the scale is going to fluctuate normally. So in the short term, the scale is basically irrelevant. It's the trend that matters the most there. So, back to the hyper-focusing on numbers. So the people that are hyper-focusing on the numbers and the scale, they also tend to have this all-or-nothing mindset, and they expect perfection. Now, I know that in some professions, in some aspects of life outside of fitness, an all-or-nothing mentality can be helpful, but not in this case. It's basically the worst thing you could possibly have as far as that goes, because you can't abstain from eating certain things forever unless you're allergic to them, and then it's different because your life could hang in the balance. But you can't have an all or nothing mentality around fitness because it just doesn't work for the long term. If someone has one and it's worked for them and they don't slip up at all and it doesn't cause them to bounce back into their old habits, I'd love to meet them. But the people I'm speaking of here, they don't learn from their mistakes, and they would rather try to be perfect rather than practice self-reflection, self-compassion, and self-love. It's important to look back at your mistakes and not view them as mistakes, but instead as learning opportunities. So I think part of the reason for this is, and why this is so widespread, is that the mainstream fitness, diet, supplement industry is driven by profit and greed rather than actually wanting to help people and caring. And we are constantly bombarded with these false promises and false results and unattainable body images and things like, lose 30 pounds in a week and do this detox and fix your liver, blah, blah, blah. And none of that really matters. One symptom that I see of a desire for perfection and all or nothing mentality is overcomplicating simple things, especially when you consider there are plenty of things going on that are beyond your control. There's a genetic component to your metabolism that you have no control over. There's really nothing you can do except work with it and accept that. So one thing to keep in mind is that you have to accept who you are right now. Getting over an all or nothing mentality isn't like a snap of the fingers. It's going to take time and effort. So you have to accept where you are right now. It doesn't matter if you're 2 pounds overweight, 20 pounds overweight, or 200 pounds overweight. It doesn't matter how far you are away from your goal. You just have to accept that and move on and keep moving forward. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. The expectation of perfection is the very reason that people tend to lose weight and then regain it and then some, because you're bouncing between something that's not sustainable. You're chasing perfection, and basically you're bouncing back to the other extreme, nothing. So it's going to be tough to kind of swallow that pill, and you really have to kind of follow through with what you're committed to. Simply just doing the all or nothing and bouncing back and forth doesn't work, as we all know, because no one's really seen success following yo-yo fad diets. For me, it wasn't until that I hit rock bottom and realized that I had to let go of my stubbornness and my ego and let go of that idea of perfection. And when I did that, I realized the only thing stopping me was myself. So in order to discover your positively oriented goals, try to imagine what you could do differently in your life, or that you want to do differently that may not be possible now, and kind of work backwards from there, like things that would just be easier from losing weight. And that's kind of how you can discover what those positively oriented goals are. I recently was talking with someone, and they went on a hike to a really high mountain peak, and they were able to look out over the valley. And they said the view was utterly breathtaking, and it was one of the best things they've ever seen. It filled them with awe. At that point, they were still over 300 pounds. And basically the side effects of seeing that breathtaking view is that they were hurt and sore and in pain for many days after. So their positively oriented goal is, I'm going to lose this weight so I can make that hike again next year and not be in pain, and I can continue to make that hike and refresh that sense of awe in my life. And that's something that I want. And every habit and every mindfulness exercise that I go through, it's all building towards that positive goal. It's not coming from a place of self-loathing. It's coming from a place of self-love so that they can have something positive. So in return, that makes the journey itself positive. So I think that pretty much covers your question, Polly. I hope it does. Okay, let me see here. The second question I have also comes from Polly, and it was related to a recent discussion about where you cut calories from if you ever have to reduce your calorie goals. So I said that basically if I ever had to reduce your calorie goals, that those calories would never come from green fibrous vegetables. And because of that, you really don't have to track them. So Polly was asking, aren't we tracking calories to assure we have a calorie deficit compared to what we're actually burning? Polly was a little bit confused about this statement that we would never cut from green fibrous vegetables. She mentions that it's a different way of thinking than from what she might be used to. She's trying to wrap her head around it. So that's an awesome question, and I imagine that many people may hear that and not fully wrap their head around it. So yes, the reason for tracking calories is to assure that you're in a calorie deficit, because that is the prime requisite for weight loss to happen. And yes, it is entirely possible that you could eat enough green fibrous vegetables to not be in a calorie deficit. So let's just say you ate 4 or 5 pounds of broccoli. That would be enough to pull you out of a calorie deficit. And technically you could say that broccoli was causing you to not lose weight because it brought you out of your calorie deficit. However, but when you're in a calorie deficit and for health in general, you want to be taking in as many free calories as possible that have vitamins and minerals and fiber that keep you full as long as possible. Those are some of the best foods you can possibly eat. So while trying to lose weight and in a calorie deficit, getting enough vitamins and minerals and fiber and feeling full become of an increased importance. So there's nothing magical about green fibrous vegetables. The calories from them still do count. Eating too much of them, like I said, can take you out of that calorie deficit. But because they're so full of those nutrients and fiber and they fill you up, that's literally the last place you would cut calories from. You probably would want to cut calories from protein before you cut vegetables out of your diet whatsoever. So I get what you're saying is that, okay, well, that means that our calorie numbers aren't accurate if we have calories we're consuming that aren't tracked. Yes, and that's okay, because it's really the trend we're looking at, the average over time. So there are going to be errors in calorie calculations in both directions. Some foods may be over, some foods may be under, and it's best to err on the side of always eating as many vegetables that are green and fibrous that you can possibly stomach, and then basically put them outside of your calories you're tracking, and if you need to cut out, reduce from everything else. So to highlight this, here's a personal example. Not every banana is the same size. You can have a tiny banana, you can have a larger banana, even in the same bunch. So that means that the calories of bananas are all different. And there's something else you may not know this, but the ripeness of the banana actually affects how many usable calories are in it. Now, again, we just talked about overcomplicating things. And this is a great example of when if you start to worry about all that stuff, you're kind of missing the forest for the trees. You'll never need to weigh a banana. So let's just say I pick an entry on MyFitnessPal for a banana and it's 110 calories. That's what I'm going to use forever, is a banana is 110 calories. That's it, done. So some bananas I eat are going to be more than that. Some are going to be less than that. But I'm going to track it as 110 calories. So over time, what's actually going on in my body, the calories that I'm consuming, are going to even out due to the law of averages. So what matters here is not the accuracy of the calories, but the consistency of your nutrition habits over time. So that segues rather nicely into the next point of discussion. And it's an example of calorie tracking not being 100% accurate, but that not really mattering, or in some cases not even being necessary. So I was recently talking with Candace, and she mentioned that she's terrible at tracking. She often forgets, she tries to put it in after the fact, and she can never remember what she ate, especially if she's making these complex recipes. But she mentioned that she eats basically the same things every day for the majority of the time, and that she's having amazing weight loss progress. She's chugging along. I think she's lost more than 15 pounds in 12 weeks. Let's just say that. So I'd say that's a pretty nice and sustainable pace from her starting point. So I told her that, hey, this is entirely fine. Just because you're not tracking, that's not really what matters here. If you're eating the same thing every day and you have a general idea of what you're taking in and you're seeing progress, accuracy, or tracking in general are the last thing you should be worrying about. If it's working, it's working. And this isn't something you should concern yourself with. It's irrelevant basically at that point. So the underlying theme here is that calorie tracking is a means to an end to guide you towards that consistency with your nutrition habits. So I'll say that again. Tracking is a means to an end. It's not the end goal itself. It's literally to guide your nutrition choices and habits towards consistency that will allow you to achieve your goals. It's not the whole point. The calorie deficit does matter, but the calories of foods are estimates. Not every chicken breast that's 100 grams has the same amount of protein. Every person is going to burn calories differently. There are unique factors to your metabolism. So even if you look at the calculations that say this is how many calories you need to maintain your weight, it's an estimate, just like calorie values are estimates. So the basic point here is working on increasing your accuracy matters when your weight loss is stalled, but back to the first point is we're not going to rely on just that scale to tell us what's happening progress-wise. But calorie tracking is a useful tool. It's just a tool. It's not the goal to basically troubleshoot if your fat loss seems to have stalled, looking at a couple factors like the scale in combination with measurements, how your clothes fit, your progress pictures, and how you feel in general. The goal here is that you should feel energetic. You shouldn't feel super hungry. Yes, anytime you're in a calorie deficit, hunger is going to creep in, but it shouldn't be ravenous, and you shouldn't be extraordinarily angry at people for no reason. That's being hangry. We want to avoid that. So I believe that covers it. This is kind of a little bit more of a complex topic, so if you kind of want to dive into it a little bit more, just please let me know, and let me know which parts are still confusing or if there's something else you just kind of wanted to add into there as a result of that. So that covers the questions I had already, but I see a question that came in live, so thank you. See one here. Let me take a look here. I have a question from Kelly. Kelly asks, I'm running out of batteries here. Let me actually switch over to my seated desk and answer this last question. Sorry about this. I thought I had enough battery power. Okay, I'm back. I'm so sorry about that. I'm going to make sure I have a extension cord next time. I thought I had enough battery power. Sorry. It lost the question, but Kelly, I believe your question was, why are we targeting a high protein intake aside from feeling full? Are there any other health benefits? Yes, that is a great question. Like you said, a higher protein intake will definitely help you feel full. one other factor is the slower you eat, the more likely you are to get a hunger signal to your brain faster. That's to say you have something that doesn't require a lot of chewing, that you can basically wolf down really fast, say Cinnamon Toast Crunch. You could pretty much wolf that down in a minute. And there is a delay between when you're actually full in your stomach and when your brain gets that signal. So if you have a food that's tough to chew, like protein is, you're going to get that full signal more likely. However, the most important reason for a higher protein intake while dieting is when you lose weight, it's going to be a mixture of both fat and protein that your body's losing, protein being muscle. So ideally, you want to lose no muscle and you want to lose all fat. So by eating a higher protein intake, you're basically signaling your body to hang on to the muscle that it has or build more muscle if you're starting weight training. If you've never weight trained before or lifted weights before, you can build muscle as a beginner right away. And it's a really great way to rapidly change your body composition. Let's just say you didn't eat a high protein intake, a low protein intake while trying to lose weight. It's very possible that you would lose muscle as well. So while you would be losing fat, yes, you would be losing weight. Some of it will be muscle, and your body composition wouldn't really change as much comparatively. The goal here would be to hang on as much muscle as possible. I believe that answers the question, Kelly. I'm just going to give it one more minute. I'm kind of going to tab around and see if anyone has submitted any questions while the hangout was going on. The Q&A portion, if you didn't join late and didn't hear, there is a Q&A app on the right-hand side is how you ask questions. And if you just type a question in there, I'm just going to check around and see if there's any other ones. You can ask anything. I had someone in a previous week ask about Belgian waffles. Why are they called Belgian waffles, and what do they call them in Belgium? So there's nothing that's taboo here. I've heard it all. All right, I'm just going to give it one more minute in case anyone comes up with a question. There's no worries. If you have a question and I don't get to it, I'll be more than happy to answer it whenever you ask it, or I can just schedule it for the next hangout. It's up to you. Just let me know either way. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions come in, but thank you for watching, and everyone have a great night, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.